We're the Medfield State Hospital Master Planning Committee. So tonight we're in the middle school gym, and we've got a bunch of tables set up, so it's not looking much like a gym tonight, right? So we've got it set up so that we have small groups are able to give us feedback on a handful of concepts that we're going to present to them tonight, and looking for whether they like those concepts in general, and there's a couple of variations on the theme. We'll look for what combinations of those two scenarios are most attractive to people, and people have the opportunity to bring up other ideas as well. The hospital closed in 2003, the '03, and the town bought the property in 2014. The committee got formed shortly thereafter, and we've been going through a number of steps to gather feedback from the town. So we've done a number of open meetings. We did 3 big surveys, and then as recently as February, we had a workshop attended by, I think, like 450 people, if I remember correctly, that came and looked at 4 radically different scenarios. So we tried to put together what we called the corner cases. So, one extreme was we would eliminate all the buildings and have a big park. Another extreme was very heavy development, and there were things sort of in the middle, and some things were sort of a big bang, we're doing all the development at once, and for others it was more phased development. So we got some pretty consistent feedback from that meeting, and we've narrowed the funnel, so to speak, and the theme was that people are looking for for sort of a mixed development, community atmosphere, and a very strong desire to preserve the historical buildings. So all the scenarios that had to do with the buildings being demoed are pretty much out the window, and we're looking to retain as much of the original architecture as possible.
So we've been meeting for a couple of years now since the town purchased the property. We've been trying to solicit a lot of feedback from townspeople about what they want to see up at the state hospital. And as our consultant Kathy McCabe says, we've done a funnel process where we've taken a lot of information, a lot of ideas, and we're trying to narrow them down to come to a single preferred plan for the property. So right now, we took all the feedback we got from the February open house, and I know a lot of you attended that. And we've devised 2 different scenarios with different emphasis in them to try to continue to test the proposition about what people want to see up in the hospital. So we value your feedback. We're going to take all the feedback we get tonight, and we're going to try to come up with a preferred alternative over the course of the summer, fine-tune it, and present it to the town in the fall, and have a town-wide town meeting in November. So that's our schedule now. It's a lot of work. We're kind of accelerating the pace, but we're trying to keep on that schedule so we can get this plan resolved and start our implementation phase. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kathy McCabe, our consultant. Thanks again.
Thanks, Steve. And I just want to say you have a fabulous committee that's been working very hard for you, and I also want to introduce my team members. I'm Kathy McCabe. I'm an economic development professional and planner, and to my right is John Amadeo. John is a landscape architect from CRJA IBI Group. Next to John is Tim Thompson. Tim is a traffic engineer, transportation engineer from Power Engineering. Paul Lucas. Paul is a lead certified professional, as is John Amadeo. Paul's an urban designer and architect with Paul Lucas Architecture and does work on visualization. Jennifer Mecca works with me, is also an architect, urban designer, and our tech person excellent. And then Harsha Prasad. Harsha is a utility engineer with Power Engineering. So this is the team members are here. Many of us have many other people who are working behind us. So as Steve said, many of you were at the February open house, and that had 4 concept plans: parkland, open space community, public destination, care and community. There were a lot of similarities. You generated a lot of comments. We have read every one of your comments, and we've distilled it with the committee. So we're looking tonight at 2 scenarios. We're looking at 4 sites. And the plans, actually at this point, because you've been giving us so much feedback, really have only subtle differences. There seems to be a fair amount of concurrence and agreement. There are common threads that you have been voicing over the last decade, many of which those comments are in the back in the black and white sheets. So we're really looking tonight to get your feedback on the uses and kind of the overall framework. And then, as Steve mentioned, we're going to go in much more detail, looking at zoning, looking in more detail on financials. So we're working more at the 20,000-foot level now, guys. So this is the funnel. We're right here, kind of in the scenario stage, and we're looking towards getting to the master plan in November. So some of the priorities that we've heard and the committee's heard is that you really want a balance at the state hospital sites, looking at uses, the scale of development, the type of housing. Open space has consistently been an important theme and something that you've wanted in terms of public access and ability to access the beautiful landscape at the state hospital. Preservation has been mentioned, as well as some skeptics and concerns about can we really save those old buildings? So that preservation's been an issue that has informed the discussion, and that there was really a desire not to have high density, but a low and moderate level of density. So we've tried to reach that. So I just want to remind you, we're talking about 4 sites. This meeting is not just about the quadrangle where the chapel is at the state hospital. We're also looking at south of Hospital Road, which is also 38 acres that the town owns, which is where the old Odyssey building is, and is now basically open land, pastoral lands. We're also looking at the Heatley site. The Heatley site has about 20 feet of frontage on Harding Street and extends towards next to the senior center and on Ice House Road. We're looking at Lot 3. Lot 3 is also on kind of the extension of Ice House Road next to the Kingsbury Club, next to the railroad. So we're looking at all 4 of those sites, 2 of which were part of the original state hospital. The latter 2, Lot 3 and Heatley, the town owns free and clear with no participation from the Commonwealth. So I'll turn it over to John.
Thank you, Kathy. So the landscape here, this beautiful landscape, creates a framework for the future development of the campus on both sides of Hospital Road. And before Jen talks about the various scenarios, I'll tell you a few observations about the landscape that will put things into a little bit of context. First, the rural character is a key feature of the historic farm and hospital district on both sides of Hospital Road, which runs up the center of the 2 pictures on the left side. And also expansive views up to the campus to the right of both of those pictures. Secondly, the varying topography of this landscape offers distinct uses that can happen on the site. For instance, on the level plateau that most of the hospital campus development already exists on, it really fosters group gathering, like festivals or tented events, whereas the slope topography from the hospital campus down to Hospital Road is really best for individual uses such as kite flying, or for such group uses as informal concerts or informal athletics, as shown in the pictures in the middle. And lastly, this site offers some wonderfully dramatic views to the pastoral landscape in the distances up to the hospital campus along the entry road, and then also out to the Charles River from the northwest corner of the Upper Plateau Hospital site. The next element is the historic aspect of this site, and the landscape is as historic as the buildings. This is a designated historic district on the National Register of Historic Places, and that encompasses not only the buildings, but the landscapes, the trees, the fieldstone features, and even the roadway layout is considered part of the historic fabric of the site. So those are things that we want to look to preserve as we're looking at future development. I know I'm talking to you about landscape, but the buildings play an important role in how you perceive the landscape in this campus. The buildings help to form spaces and also to create recognizable places, such as the common on the west side of the chapel. You know where you are when you're in front of the chapel. Lastly, landscape features can help to create the transitions between public development and private development. So as Jen is trying to explain to you where private residential might go and where the public commercial and the public other activities like arts might go, landscape can help create those transitions between public and private, particularly when we locate site furniture strategically so that seating is located in a public area so people feel welcome there even if they don't live on the campus. Such as the two pictures on the upper right, which is Carlton Willard, which is a senior housing facility. And then on the lower right, we have a picture of the actual hospital campus showing that shade trees are a really good buffer between the buildings and the public sidewalks, so the private uses of the buildings can be buffered from the public activity on the sidewalks. So now Tim is going to talk to you about utilities.
Thank you, John. So we have developed a traffic and circulation plan that we feel will work with both of the scenarios that Jen is going to describe after I speak here. As John mentioned, we are trying to preserve as much of the historic nature of the property as possible, including much of the existing roadway layout. So the two main site entrances off the hospital road will be maintained. Those will both be two-direction travel. We will also have a circulating outer loop, which will be two-way traffic, which will be mostly for vehicular circulation and serve the majority of vehicular traffic circulating on the site. We'll also have an interior loop that'll be one direction, that'll be more pedestrian friendly. It'll have shorter crossing distances for pedestrians. It'll have lower vehicular volumes, so it'll be safer for pedestrians to move between buildings through the main quad. We'll also be removing some of what we see to be some of the excess roadways, just reducing impervious on the site. And we'll also be upgrading and also adding to much of the pedestrian pathways and circulation on the site, allowing people to comfortably move between many of the buildings on the site. And I'll let Jen talk about the two scenarios.
Okay, great. So we have two scenarios that we've put together, and as Kathy mentioned, you're probably going to see that there's a lot of similar elements in both of them, but that's because we've been listening and seeing that there actually are things that are important, and we've tried to incorporate them in both. The first one, we've separated the two with colors. One's blue, one's orange, and you'll see that when you get the packets handed out for your work sessions. And I know it's probably hard to see some of the detail on these, so you'll be able to read that when you get the plans at your tables. In the first option, we're calling this town square, and that's because what it does is it takes and creates a very large open space in the center of the quad, like right in the center of the main buildings. This actually is a really large open space. It's actually the size of almost 3 soccer fields. It's achieved by taking out the one building that isn't historic in the middle. It's a fairly modern building that was probably built in the 50s or 60s, but it's not really relevant to historic preservation. So in that respect, then what we do is, in this scheme, we're showing that all of the buildings surrounding the main campus are to be developed as apartments or residential uses. The other feature in this core area, as part of this kind of town square, is incorporating the use of the chapel and the infirmary for an art center, which is something that's been discussed before. And also having on the south side, and these drawings are rotated, so The south is actually to the right of the drawing. On the south side of the main campus quad, we're showing some opportunity for commercial development and possibly a daycare center so that it helps bring activity to that central core area. On the Hospital Road side on the south, we're showing what we call the green and keeping that open. As John said, it's a really beautiful area. And keeping that landscaped area open is something that could be used for events or public gatherings. And then on the opposite side, there's a really beautiful area on the north side of the campus, which is just these really wonderful rolling hills, so keeping that preserved as open space as well. And that helps support the housing too, because that really, gives views and actually kind of increases the desire to be out there and live out there. On the north side, we are showing a little area just to the north of the existing buildings to reserve for potential future development. And then down on Hospital Road, shown in the brighter yellow, there's some existing residential down there, single-family homes. We're showing keeping that as single-family homes, perhaps adding a few more in there, so that there's a range of housing types available on the site, so everything from apartments to single-family. On the west side, which is shown at the bottom of the page, with the views out to the Charles, we're showing a potential senior living center. This would be a combination of new construction and some restoration of some of the existing buildings. And that would have either nursing care, memory care, or perhaps just assisted living in it. So if we go to the next slide, this is an image of how it would look. And again, you'll be able to see this with the printouts that you get at your tables, but just an overview of how it would play out with the green space at the front from Hospital Road kind of working its way into the large open green square in the center. If we look at the second scheme, this one we actually take the opposite approach and we actually keep some of the buildings more densely in the actual core of the campus. We're calling this one the rural village. And in this, you'll see the orange in the center that is actually taking and putting the senior living right in the center of the campus, so it's easily accessible to some of the other uses like the arts center, which could be, again, here shown as part of the chapel and the infirmary. We're also showing some commercial development in the center with perhaps a cafe, some offices, something that helps keep this an active center space that really is publicly accessible that way. In this scheme, we took a slightly different approach to some of the open space like that up on the north side of the campus, shown on the left side of the drawing here. We're actually suggesting that this could be rented out or leased out for agricultural use, something that would help preserve the kind of character of what this was when the hospital was operating. To that effect, too, down on the Hospital Road side, where we had the small houses and cottages in the other scheme, in this case, we're suggesting actually taking those away and creating an arboretum that's a public open space. There is a really wonderful tree collection there that actually is something that should be preserved. And so this scenario says, let's just keep that open and focus all of the housing density up on the main campus itself. The last thing I'll point out on this one is that on the west side, which is at the bottom of the page here, in that instance here we're showing potential commercial development because this is an area that's easily accessible from the road without conflicting with the housing and residential uses. The thought here is that in some of the schemes that you guys have gone through in the past, that maybe there is an inn here with a restaurant function or entertainment function hall for weddings, things like that. And also perhaps some office space. So if we turn to the next slide, this is just again another representation of that. You'll see the orange building in the center of this space in the middle of the quad. In this case, what you're left over for green space here, you still have something that's larger than a soccer field back there, so it's not small or insignificant. So let me go to the next slide. I'll just talk a little bit quickly about the next piece of the site, which is the south side of Hospital Road. We have shown two different scenarios here. We've heard the desire from Parks and Recreation to have a facility on the south side of Hospital Road. This is showing what their projected facility size is. It is a 26,000 square foot program space, and then a potential for an additional 30,000 square foot indoor recreation field. And this represents about what the parking requirement would be for that size of facility. If If we go to the next, this is the other option on this. What we're showing here is similar to the north side in this scenario where we're showing potential agricultural use. The soil conditions on this side of Hospital Road are actually really, really good. So this would be very conducive to potentially leasing out for agricultural uses. And we're showing the option of possibly putting a barn and greenhouse that would help support that use on this side of the road. And with that, I will pass it on to Paul.
Thank you, Jen. So I'd like to talk about Lot 3 and the Hinckley lot. In both cases, we're going to look at two scenarios. In both cases, there's going to be an access road, an ice house road. And that's to provide better connection to the site. Next, please. So here's Ice House Road. So in order to improve access, we're going to improve the quality of the street and the experience. In this scenario, we're looking at senior housing, about 42 units. And then there will be a large parking lot that's completely covered in solar panels on the Lot 3. In this case, we're going to have conservation land preserved on the northeast corner, and access is provided by parking in front. In this scenario, we're reversing the relationship, so senior parking now is going to Lot 3, and we're introducing cottages on the Hinckley lot. The Hinckley lot would have 14 cottages, each is about 1,600 square feet, and there would also be a site up in the northeast corner which could be developed and sold to a private developer. Then the senior housing would move to lot number 3. That again would be 42 units. Next.
So this is a brief breakdown of the utilities on site. As of right now, we do have water supply. However, during a max day demand situation, for example, the summer, the amount of water available will become a challenge based on the permitting. Sewer, there's no infrastructure on site, so we need to revamp that system and incorporate that. Electric and gas are available with Eversource and Columbia Gas as the primary utility. And for telecommunications, we know that Xfinity is the major provider over here. So for the water, as I mentioned, there will be some infrastructure changes. To actually extend and redo the piping on site, it would roughly cost $1.2 million. For the sewer, the proposed flow from the site would roughly be 120,000 gallons a day, which falls under the NIPD's permitting for the wastewater treatment plant on site. And that would cost $4.5 million for new piping and a pump station as well. As I mentioned, electric and gas are both available. However, upgrades may be necessary for the proposed development.
So housing has been a very hot topic in many of your minds. So scenario 1 has 268 units. That includes housing on the quad, housing on lot 3, and housing on Hinckley. And scenario 2 has 291 units. Again, the proportion of market rate housing and affordable housing is about 30% affordable to market rate 71%. The lot 3 example and the Hinckley example that Paul talked about with 42 units, that would give you a 2-year safe harbor with 40B. That's why we looked at 42 units. That also has a very positive cash flow. We also, on the Hinckley, the cottages, that could be senior single-family empty nester homes, was at the request of the Senior Housing Committee, and that could include affordable, but not all of them would be affordable. There'd be a mix. So we looked at, we compared the housing mix. Again, in scenario 1, about 70%, 75% of the housing would be open to any person who wants to lease or buy a unit. There's a mix of both owner-occupied in terms of the small-scale cottages or single-family, whether that's on Hinckley or the southeast quadrant. Most all the other is rental, and let me tell you why we need rental. To use historic tax credits, you have to have 5 years minimum of rental housing. So we would recommend doing condo quality so that you lease for 5 years and then you can convert to condos, so you could have owner occupancy if you wish. We included a group home, and the scenario 2 has about 45–47% of general housing on the main quad. There's several types of senior housing in both scenarios. There's also artist live work housing in scenario 2. So that's a quick overview of the scenarios and kind of a broad brush stroke on some of the finances. We can go into a lot more detail, but at this stage of the discussion, we really want to get your feedback on uses, so that we can then have a more robust analysis of the finances.